Hi, it's Edward, back with another video. Please take a moment to click the thumbs up button below and consider subscribing to the channel. Please also share this video via social media and with your friends via email. Thank you for your support. Today, I read several financial news articles. I've included links to the articles in the description below. I encourage you to read the articles to support the authors and news sources. As a private American citizen, I'd like to report and share my transformative thoughts through commentary regarding small sections of these articles that are of public interest. There may be an unemployment crisis in America for some people who recently lost their jobs. Today, I read an article on Yahoo Finance put out by Reuters entitled, "U.S. Weekly Jobless Claims Rise More Than Expected." According to Reuters, initial claims for state unemployment benefits rose 13,000 to a seasonally adjusted 231,000 for the week ending November 11th, the Labor Department said on Thursday. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast 220,000 claims for the latest week. In my opinion, the 11 rate hikes by the Federal Reserve may be having an impact on the economy. 70% of GDP in America comes from consumer spending, and many consumers are spending less now for a variety of reasons. Many who rely on credit to spend are in a situation where the interest on their debt is becoming more difficult to manage given the high levels of interest being charged. Many everyday Americans are paying more for rent than they have in recent years, which limits the amount of money they have left over each month to spend into the economy. Vehicle insurance costs are up, food at the grocery store is up, vehicle maintenance is more expensive, daycare is more expensive, and now tens of millions of Americans need to resume making their student loan payments. It's no surprise that people are spending less, and that is having a small impact on the economy. When businesses slow, they often need to reduce human capital to adjust, resulting in unemployment. What I just described aligns with another story that I read today on yahoo.com, put out by Reuters and written by Lucia Mutakani, titled, "U.S. Economy Cools as Retail Sales Dip, Monthly Producer Prices Decline." According to the author, U.S. retail sales fell for the first time in 7 months in October as motor vehicle purchases and spending on hobbies dropped, pointing to slowing demand at the start of the fourth quarter that further strengthened expectations the Federal Reserve is done hiking interest rates. The author went on to indicate receipts at motor vehicles and parts dealers fell 1.1%, while furniture store sales dropped 2%, and receipts at building material and garden equipment outlets slipped 0.3%. There was a 1.7% decline in sales at miscellaneous retailers. Sporting goods, hobby, musical instrument, and bookstore sales fell 0.8%. Clothing store sales were unchanged, while receipts at electronics and appliance outlets rose 0.6%, and online sales rose 0.2%. Sales at food services and drinking places gained 0.3%. Student loan repayments resumed for millions of Americans, but recent data from the Bank of America Institute showed no indication yet that the change was negatively impacting spending. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I find that last statement to be very interesting. I'm surprised that student loan payments resuming showed no indication yet that the change was negatively impacting spending. Did you pick up on the fact that Bank of America used the word yet? I think that is important to pay attention to. Biden's on-ramp program for student loans means that people who don't resume making student loan payments won't be penalized other than interest accruing until October 2024. I'd like to make sure that you understand that individuals who don't resume making their student loan payments won't get a late fee or be reported to a credit reporting agency, and they can't be considered delinquent or in default. Once October 2024 rolls around and the on-ramp period ends, it's a totally different situation then. I really wonder how many everyday Americans are choosing not to resume making their student loan payments right now because they know there are no penalties other than interest accruing. For some who owe a lot of money on student loans, who cares if the balance gets a little larger? It's only money, right? I personally think that we could see spending slow further after October 2024, when penalties will be imposed for people who do not resume making their student loan payments. I'm not a psychologist, but I do understand human behavior to a limited extent, which is why I think we may start to see more of an impact of student loan payments resuming after October 2024. Tell me what you think in the comments section below, especially if you have friends or family members grappling with student loan payments right now. With regard to consumer spending, Home Depot was in the news. I read an article on Investopedia.com written by Nathan Reef titled, "Home Depot Cuts Guidance as Sales Decline Despite Earnings Beat." According to the author's key takeaways, compared to the same period last year, third quarter net income at $3.8 billion was down 12%, while sales at $37.7 billion were 3% lower. Slowing sales could be attributed to high inflation and the interest rate environment. Well, this is no shocker to me. Given many Americans rely on credit to spend, they are now having a more difficult time doing that in this higher interest rate environment. If you were someone who was in a situation where you couldn't pay off your credit card at the end of each billing cycle, and you had to let that debt roll over accruing interest in the low 20% range, imagine how quickly that debt could become unmanageable, which would impact your ability to keep spending. When you are struggling to make the minimum payment on your credit card, you aren't thinking about remodeling your bathroom and buying supplies at Home Depot. If you are struggling to make the minimum payment on your credit card, you also aren't thinking about buying a new lawnmower at Home Depot or a new patio set for the backyard. It's not just Home Depot being impacted. Today, I read an article on Yahoo Finance put out by Reuters and written by Shristi Akara and Amrita Kandakar, titled "Wall Street Rally Set to Stall as Cisco and Walmart Weigh." According to the authors, shares of Cisco Systems shed 9.5% before the bell as the communication and networking firm cut its full-year revenue and profit forecasts on slowing demand for its networking equipment. Walmart dropped 6.3% as the retail giant cautioned about weaker consumer spending ahead of the holiday season, even as it raised annual sales and profit forecast. This really provides some insight into the American consumer's behavior right now. I just wonder how weak consumer spending will be as we get into the holiday season. The big question on my mind is whether or not consumers will spend using credit to have the same type of holiday events that they are accustomed to having, even though they can't afford it. Or will they be more responsible and cut back and alter their holiday spending and plans? What do you think? Will your family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers keep spending this holiday season? Or will they alter their behavior in order to save money? Let me know in the comment section below. Earlier in this video, I referenced information regarding unemployment in America. I worry about those who become unemployed that don't have an emergency fund to rely on. For some young people, this could be a very big problem. I read an article today on CNBC.com written by Annie Probert titled, "56% of Gen Z doesn't have an emergency fund. Here's the first thing you should do to build one," according to a CFP. According to the author, 56% of Gen Zers say they don't have enough savings to cover 3 months of expenses in the event of an emergency. They're also the most likely out of any generation to regret not saving enough for emergencies, according to Bankrate. In my opinion, many in this younger generation may be in for a rude awakening if the economy takes a turn for the worse and we see unemployment spike. Some may lose their jobs and be ill-prepared until they can find new employment. In a down economy, it may take longer for some people to secure new employment. Many young people in Generation Z have only known what it is like to work during good economic times. Living paycheck to paycheck might be okay now, but life can get very real when you become unemployed and have no emergency savings to weather the storm with. Some young Gen Zers may have wealthy parents or grandparents who can provide financial support, but not everyone is in that fortunate position. Some people are on their own, and they need to be very careful, in my opinion. The author of this article references a CFP, Douglas Boneparth, who suggests mastering your monthly cash flow so that you can save for an emergency fund. In my opinion, this may mean living beneath your means to free up the cash necessary for an emergency fund. Now, this article talks about how Gen Zers don't have enough savings to cover 3 months of expenses in the event of an emergency. I personally would be freaking out if I didn't have at least 6 months to a year of emergency savings. Why wouldn't you have 6 months to a year of emergency savings, especially now when you can earn over 5% on your cash? If you become unemployed, it takes a while to get a new job, especially a professional job. Many companies wait until they have a pool of applicants, and then they start interviewing. Then they narrow down the pool further for additional interviews. Eventually, they extend offers. Once you accept an offer, you have to go through a background check process and an onboarding process. Eventually, you will receive a paycheck, but this could take a while, which is why, from my perspective, it is important to have an emergency fund. Why not plan for the worst so that you are prepared for any possibility? That's just my opinion, but what do I know? I'm just some guy on YouTube. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. For those who become unemployed without any emergency savings, I suppose they could try living in a tiny home village, assuming they are located in Los Angeles. I read an article today on yahoo.com put out by KTLA Articles and written by Lauren Lister, titled "Emergency Calls Piling Up at LA's Tiny Home Villages." The author of this article talks about how a man named Richard Clark found himself homeless after an injury prevented him from working. For the past year, he has lived in North Hollywood's Chandler Boulevard Tiny Home Village. He lives in a 64 square foot tiny home with 2 beds, which he said is better than sleeping on a public bench, which is where he used to sleep. Now keep in mind, this is not the lap of luxury, and there are still problems that occur at villages like this. The author references large numbers of emergency calls for suspected assault, threats, weapons, suicides, and overdoses. Now, I think it's wonderful that there are tiny home villages to help those in need, but I think everyday Americans should do whatever is possible to manage their financial affairs so they don't end up in a place like this. This may include building up emergency savings, in my opinion. In order to build up emergency savings, you sometimes have to forego things in life that you would like to spend money on. Unfortunately, many in Generation Z are not doing this, since 56% don't have adequate emergency savings, according to the article that I referenced earlier today. To make matters worse, some in Generation Z apparently are blowing off retirement savings as well. I read an article today on yahoo.com put out by Blavity News and written by Kira Alessandrini, titled "Gen Z is Prioritizing Life Experiences Over Retirement Amid Rising Cost of Living." The author of the article indicates Gen Z faces financial challenges their parents did not at the same age, including lower wages, higher student loans, and higher housing costs. Nearly 3 in 4 of Gen Zers say the current economy makes them hesitant to set up long-term goals, according to the Intuit study. This means most are not sure they will ever have enough money to be able to retire. Instead, 73% of respondents say they would rather have a better quality of life than additional savings. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this may not be a good situation for many people in Generation Z. Take some time to do a search online about the retirement crisis that we may currently have here in America. Many baby boomers benefited from some amazing decades in stock market growth and staggering real estate appreciation. Also consider that many baby boomers entered the workforce at a time when pensions were still somewhat prevalent. If large numbers of baby boomers are struggling during retirement years, imagine how much worse of a retirement crisis there could be here in America once Generation Z reaches retirement age. I absolutely cringe at that thought. If I were a young Gen Zer, I would do everything possible to live beneath my means so that I could save for retirement. If necessary, I would consider a part-time job to bring in more money to sustain myself so that I could allocate money from my primary employer to a retirement plan and take advantage of a company match, assuming one was provided. I would forego niceties and fun experiences and focus on future financial security. Of course, that's me, and I'm old and boring and very frugal. I'm sure many young Gen Zers want to enjoy life and live for today. Maybe some think they will inherit money from their parents or grandparents, so they just aren't worried about retirement. Maybe some think it is still a long way off, so they'll worry about it later. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comment section below regarding what is happening with those in Generation Z. Please keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice or advice of any kind. If you need advice, seek advice from a qualified professional in good standing who puts your interests first and foremost. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel. Please also consider sharing this video via social media or via email with your friends. I want to extend a special thanks to everyone who has subscribed to this channel. I want to also thank all of my channel members. Check out some of the great books that I suggest you consider reading in the description below. I've included Amazon affiliate links to these books. As an Amazon associate, I earn from qualifying purchases. Stay healthy and wealthy. I'll see everyone in the next video.